Good evening and welcome to this candidate forum. This forum is being recorded and presented in English with simultaneous Spanish interpretation. Tonight, we are fortunate to have Berta Campos and Damaris Cara with us as your interpreters. You will soon hear from the 6 candidates running for 3 seats on the San Anselmo Town Council. But first, Berta will tell you how you may listen to this forum in Spanish.
Hola, bienvenidos al foro de esta noche que presenta a los candidatos que se postulan para el Ayuntamiento de San Anselmo. Este foro se presenta en inglés con interpretación simultánea en español. Si desea escuchar el foro en español, haga clic en el icono del globo de interpretación en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Si está en un dispositivo inteligente, ya sea un celular o una tableta, o si no ve el globo, por favor, busque los 3 puntitos y en esos puntitos usted oprima el clic y luego escoja la traducción, interpretación de idiomas. Luego seleccione español. Y finalmente, todos por favor pongan en silencio el audio original. Esta opción la puede encontrar en el mismo menú del icono de globo. Haga clic en silenciar el audio original para escuchar solo español y no los 2 idiomas al mismo tiempo. Gracias.
Please bear with us for a moment while we set up the Spanish audio. Now, I am delighted to introduce Benedetto Chico, President of the San Anselmo Chamber of Commerce. Benedetto, you're okay.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Benedetto Chico, the President of the San Anselmo Chamber of Commerce. Many thanks to all the citizens who are attending tonight's forum. Many thanks to the candidates and to the Marine League of Women Voters who has helped us up to set this forum together. I'd like to remind everybody that we are a all-volunteer chamber, so all the revenues from our membership and events go back to our community, to our great town. So I would like to recognize our board members, Nancy Altman, Chris Kelson, Vance Frost, Lori Berliner, and our great ambassador, Frank Gomez, who, by the way, had just been named Business Citizen of the Year for the Bank of Marine Spirit of Marine Award. Thank you, Frank. We support many events and several organizations in town, among them Live on the Avenue, the Flower Baskets, Classic Car Show, Sip and Stroll, Beatles in the Park, and coming very soon, our annual traditional holiday tree light celebration. We would like to encourage everybody, even if you're not a business, if you're not a merchant, please join the chamber, support our great community. And coming to tonight's forum, elections are very important, we know, and I believe, all believe that local elections are even more important, as most of our daily life is really set, both as residents and business owners, by the rules, regulations that are passed at our local level. So it is extremely important to pay attention to our local elections. This incoming town council will have really important work to deal with on some extremely important issues that affect our lives. Among them, we have a big debate, as we know, about rent control, high density, and flood control. As a chamber of commerce, and by the way, we are independent, we are not linked to any national or state organization, we are fully independent. We clearly care a lot about the impact that our town has on our businesses, on our merchants, and on the economic vitality and cultural vitality of our community. So we really strongly encourage our elected officials and the town staff to understand what we as businesses and merchants and restaurants we need when you make your decisions. Please do listen to us. You know, San Anselmo is a great place also because we have such a vibrant local business district, from downtown to Red Hill to Greenfield. So final reminder, encouragement, suggestion, please, to all the candidates tonight, please remember that you represent us, we the citizens, we the people, and good luck to all of you, and thank you for making this possible. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Benedetto.
Gracias,
I'm Becky
Benedetto.
Beñé. I'm your moderator
Soy
for
Becky
tonight.
Beñé, su moderadora de esta
And,
noche.
good evening and welcome to this
Buenas
candidate
noches y
forum presented
bienvenidos
by
a
the
este
League of
foro de
Women Voters of
candidatos
Marin
presentado
County
por
and
la
the
Liga
San
de
Anselmo
Mujeres
Chamber.
Votantes del Condado de
With
Marín y
me
la
are
Cámara de
board members
Comercio de San
Didi
Anselmo.
Butori, our
Conmigo
Zoom
está
support
Didi
leader,
Butori
and Carol
y
Inkles, our
Carol
timetable and
Inkles,
question sorter,
que mantiene la
along with the technical
cronometría
support team at the
y
Community
Technical
Media
Support
Center of
Team
Marin,
con
CMTM.
el Centro de
Berta
Medio Comunitario
Campos
de
and
Marín,
Damaris
Berta
Caro,
Campos y
who are
Damaris
providing
Caro,
Spanish language
que están brindando
interpretation.
interpretación esta noche.
Tonight we will hear from the 6 candidates running for the 3 seats on the
Escucharemos
San
los 6
Anselmo Town
candidatos que se
Council.
postulan para
This
3
legislative
escaños en
body is
el Ayuntamiento de
responsible for setting
San
town
Anselmo.
policy
Este
and
cuerpo
adopting the
legislativo es
town's budget.
responsable de establecer la política
5 council
municipal y
members are
adoptar el
elected at large
presupuesto
by the San
municipal.
Anselmo
5
electorate
concejales
for 4
son
years.
elegidos en general por el
The
electorado de
Marin League
San
of Women
Anselmo por un
Voters is
periodo
a
de 4
trusted,
años. La
nonpartisan,
Liga de Mujeres
member-supported
Votantes del Condado de
organization
Marín
that
es una
encourages
organización
informed
confiable y
and
no
active
partidista que
participation
fomenta
in
la
government.
participación informada
We
y activa en
promote
el
voter
gobierno.
education and
Promovemos
advocate for
educación al
issues.
votante y
We
abogamos
never
por
endorse
problemas o
or oppose
cuestiones. Nunca
candidates or
respaldamos
political
ni nos
parties.
oponemos a candidatos o
Moderating
partidos
candidate
políticos.
forums is an important
Moderar
part of
foros
our
de
work.
candidatos es una parte
This
importante de
evening's
nuestro trabajo.
forum is
El
being
foro de esta
simulcast
noche
on
se
Marin
transmitirá
TV Channel 30,
simultáneamente en el canal 30 de
facilitated
Marín
through our
TV,
partnership with
facilitado a través
CMTM.
de nuestra
It
asociación
is
con
being recorded
CMCM.
and will be
Se
available
está
at our
grabando y
website,
estará disponible en nuestro sitio web
marinlw.org.
marin.org. Será
Marin TV
retransmitido por el
channel
canal
here.
30 de Marín de
There are
TV.
6 candidates running
Hay
for
6
3 seats
candidatos
on
que
the
se
town
postulan para
council.
3 escaños
Eileen
del
Burke,
ayuntamiento. Eileen
Ford
Burke,
Green,
por Verde,
Kurt Johnson,
Kurt
Guy Meyer,
Johnson, Guy
Joab
Meyer,
Schlesinger,
Joab
and Chantal
Schlesinger
Walker.
y Chantal Walker.
All of the candidates have
Todos los
agreed to provide
candidatos
the
han
infinite
aceptado
time
las
limits for
direcciones y
this
límites
forum.
del tiempo de
Each
este foro.
candidate's
Cada
invited to
candidato
make
es
a
invitado a
2-minute
hacer una
opening
declaración
statement.
de apertura de 2
After that, they
minutos.
will each have
Después
1
de
minute
eso,
to
cada
answer
uno
each
tendrá un minuto
question.
para responder cada
To be
pregunta.
fair, I will
Para ser
rotate
justo,
the order
rotaré el
and all
orden de
candidates will
las
be asked the
preguntas.
same questions.
Todos los candidatos se les
So for
haré
opening
la misma
statements,
pregunta.
we'll begin with Eileen.
Para el discurso de apertura comenzaremos con Aileen.
Thank you. I'm Eileen Burke.
Gracias,
I'm the current mayor
soy
of San
Aileen
Anselmo, and I'm
y
running
soy
for my
la
second term on the council.
alcaldesa
I was
de
born and
San
raised in San
Anselmo.
Anselmo and have lived in
Es mi
San
segundo
Anselmo for my
término.
entire life.
Nací en San
This gives
Anselmo y he
me a
vivido
unique
aquí toda mi
perspective
vida.
because I
Esto me da una
identify with just about
perspectiva
every member
única
of town. If you have
y
kids, I was
si
a kid in
tienen
this town.
hijos, yo
Me and my
también
5 brothers and
fue
sisters
niña
walked and rode our bikes
en
to
este
school.
lugar.
We played on the
Todos
fields where we learned.
caminamos a la
We
escuela con
relented
mis
if there was
hermanos,
nothing to do as
jugamos en
teenagers.
los
If you have a
campos
young
y no
family,
teníamos
I
nada
was
que hacer
there.
cuando
My
éramos
husband and I
adolescentes.
raised our twins in San
Y,
Anselmo.
y
We
si
had 2
son
working
padres,
parents
yo
who had to
también
find
he
daycare.
crecido a mis hijos
My kids
aquí.
walked and biked to
Y
school.
también
Heading
mis
to Mill
hijos
Common,
andaban en
White Hill, and Archie
bicicleta y
Lennon.
fueron a la
We played at the
escuela.
Dinosaur Park, which I helped
Jugamos en
build
el
in
parque de
2000 before you were even
dinosaurios
born. They played on those
y
same fields at Memorial,
jugamos
which is why
en
I pushed
el
to renovate them on
Memorial
the council.
y
Are
ella
you a renter?
decidió
My family
renovarlo.
rented in
Si
San
usted
Anselmo for
renta,
15 years
nosotros
before we staged
rentamos
in that
como
tiny
familia
house.
por 15
If you are
años
a young family
antes de
looking to
comprar la
expand,
casa.
we
Si es
remodeled
una
ours. We
familia
had to
que
deal with the
quiere
planning and
expander,
zoning
también
department. If you
renovamos
have a
y
small
expandimos
business,
nuestra
my
casa.
husband and I are both
Mi
self-employed,
esposo y
and
yo
we know the
también somos
challenges.
dueños de
Are
negocio
you
y
concerned about
sabemos los
flooding? Well, I
retos.
live in the flood zone, and I'm
Está
with you.
preocupado por las
Wondering how you're
inundaciones. Yo
aging,
vivo
San
aquí
Anselmo?
también
I have a
y es mi
91-year-old father
preocupación.
who lives with my sister and
Tengo
her son in the house right
un
directly.
padre de
So I
90
understand
años que vive con mi
multi-generational
hermana
housing
y
is one answer.
entiendo
I volunteered to serve
la
every
vivienda
capacity at school, sports,
multigeneracional
and
es una
town
de
events.
las
Here's what I've done on the
posibilidades.
council. I
¿Qué
led
es
the
lo que he
renovation of
hecho?
Memorial Park
En el
Field and
consejo
the Hollywood
renovó el
Dinosaur
Memorial
Playground.
Park
I'm
Field
currently leading the final phase
y
of
el Parque
Memorial, which serves
Dinosaurio
to the
y
south staff.
ahorita
I
está
pushed for
haciendo
a
la
new
última
park,
fase
Hilltop Pocket
de la
Park on
renovación.
United Market.
También empezó un fondo para parques, renovó la parte detrás del supermercado United. No estoy enfocada en un solo asunto, sino que en todos y quiere mantener la calidad de vida. Y si usted, cuando el Marine IJ me endorsó, ellos dijeron que yo soy una buena candidata. Espero que voten, contar con su voto. Gracias.
Thank you to the league for this chance to address you, the public, and other candidates. From those without experience, you may hear platitudes and bromides about keeping our community safe and vibrant and working well with others. With no records to examine and upon which to base your judgment, your only choice is to take them at their word. With 15 years on the San Anselmo Town Council from 07 to 22, three terms as mayor, I'm different from that. I have a record you can scrutinize. My record includes 6 years on the Ross Valley Fire District Board, including as chair. I'm endorsed by the Ross Valley Professional Firefighters. 13 years on Marin Clean Energy, including its executive committee and as chair of the technical committee. I'm endorsed by former MCE board members, including Assemblyman Damon Connolly, Fairfax Mayor Barbara Kohler, former executive committee chair and Richmond Mayor Tom Butt, and former VP and current El Cerrito Councilman Gabriel Quinto. 9 years on the Central Marin Police Authority Board, including as chair. 6 years on Transportation Authority of Marin, including its executive committee, Flood Zone 9 Advisory Board, San Anselmo Flood Committee, and the San Anselmo Refuse and Recycling Subcommittee. My success on those regional and local boards came by showing up prepared, clearly stating my positions regarding issues, actively listening, and when appropriate, changing my mind. Elected officials often forget what public service means. They forget who they represent, what their purpose is, and how to accomplish it. Consistently independent, I uphold what is right. I was the only council member who voted to protect Memorial Park from becoming a flood control basin and against an unnecessary $9 million park tax. I look forward to participating in tonight's program. Thank you.
Thank you, Ford. Next is Kurt.
Gracias.
Thank you,
Ahora
Becky,
Kurt.
and thanks
Gracias,
to our
Becky.
host, the
Y
chamber,
gracias
and
a
the
nuestro anfitrión,
first, a little personal
la
background. My wife,
Cámara de
Pamela,
Comercio
has lived in
y la
San
Liga de
Anselmo since
Mujeres.
2013.
Hemos estado en San Anselmo
Luke is a
desde
third grader at
2013.
Ray Thomas Elementary School.
Nuestro
I'm running for
hijo
town
Luke
council for a
está
number of
en
reasons. First
tercer
and
grado.
foremost, because
Estoy
I've worked in planning
corriendo
my whole career.
para el
I'd like us to be
ayuntamiento
better prepared for the extreme weather
porque
events that
me
are headed our way.
gusta,
We just saw a
quiero
massive
estar
wind damage
preparado
in the
para
southeast.
clima
We see climate
extremo.
science every day. We're simply not prepared
No
for what's
estamos
headed our way.
preparados.
The good news is,
La
unlike
buena
most places in
noticia
the world, we
es que
actually have
como
the
la
funds
mayoría de los
available
lugares sí
and the
tenemos
smarts, I
dinero
think, get better prepared
para
if we choose
poder
to do
estar
this.
mejor preparados y
Related to that,
hacerlo
we've
bien.
had a long track record of delivering results and resilience, both
Tenemos un
locally
buen
and
récord
statewide.
de
chair the Climate
tener
Commission,
éxito haciendo
Town Resilience
cambios
Hub, that's
en la
just getting underway. I
comisión de
appreciate you coming in tomorrow
planeamiento
night. I first
y
support
la
that
reunión de
Resilience
mañana
Clean
en la
of our EV
noche.
Resilience bill that just got signed by the governor, so we can all
Y
hopefully use our cars to
pasaron
keep the
un
lights
bill
on
que,
in our
que
homes
firmó
and
el
service throughout
gobernador y
town.
esos fondos pueden ser usados para nuestra
Based on talking to
ciudad.
voters and neighbors, I think we
Basado
do
en
much
hablando
better
con
job supporting local small
votantes,
businesses that provide essential local services. And
es
to get into that,
importante
I think
apoyar
we're
a
in
los
the debate.
negocios pequeños que
As a parent
mantienen
of a school-age
el
kid,
pueblo
I
bien
benefited from all of San Anselmo's youth services,
y también
gymnastics, and
beneficios
San Anselmo Rec
para
Sports, summer camp.
los programas
It's
para
important to
jóvenes
continue these
de
same family
gimnasio
activities.
y es súper
And
importante,
finally,
gimnasia
I'm
y
running
otras
because I want
cosas.
to bring
Y últimamente sí
pragmatic,
estoy
centrist leadership to town
corriendo para
council.
este
I think there's been
puesto.
some bad decisions over the last year
Así han habido
that I
algunas
disagree with
decisiones no
strongly
tan
related to
buenas
flooding and housing.
y que yo no
And I
estoy de
think,
acuerdo con
and I
ellas
hope
y
that there's a
espero
pragmatic, collaborative center
que
road
haya
in
una
Anselmo
manera de
politics. And
colaborar
that's the lane where I think we should be traveling
y
moving forward together. So I look forward
queremos
to
que
the discussion
trabajar
tonight. Thank you.
juntos y espero su voto.
Thanks, Kurt. Okay, next is Guy. And please unmute yourself.
Hi there.
¿Cómo
My
está?
name is Guy Meyer,
Luis Guy
and
Meyer,
I've been a resident of San Anselmo
presidente
since
de
1975.
1975.
My early time working in a
Sí,
natural food co-op. I've worked in sustainable food business
ah,
for many years. Our
sostenible,
store, 1975 to 85, to the
sosteniendo,
Flower Brothers, to Living Foods on Greenfield. I've been actively involved in
estado activamente
the
envuelto
commitment to seeing my community
para ver nuestra
have a
comunidad,
environmental consciousness and a vision.
conciencia del
I also served
ambiente.
on the Ecological Farming Association, which is an all California early organic organization. In
Ambiente
1993,
ecológico,
I was the leader
es
of a local movement that got Roundup
movimiento local.
removed from the park's arsenal of herbicide weapons. And it's interesting to see back in that time, back then, the Parks Department, everybody claimed there would be no problem with this. And this is sort of the same thing we get today, I think, with a lot of what's going on in the world today still. Destructive forces that have not changed. We're still dealing with them. And some of them come because of our government's own
Y algunas de ellas
inability to recognize that we're part of the
el
problem.
gobierno no lo reconoce.
Number one thing I see, well, we have a number of things. The platform needs to be returned to the people. The beginning of this flood district thing was a misguided plan. Housing issues in California we are not served well at all by having them be mandated to us. We have it's could destroy our environment, our public safety, and is diminishing our local democracy.
Está
I
rebajando
welcome your votes and your endorsements as citizens. Thank you.
su respaldo.
Thank you very much.
Gracias.
Okay,
Gracias.
Yoav, you're next.
Yoav, usted
Good
sigue.
evening, and thank you for the
Buenas
opportunity to
noches y
share
gracias
my
por la
vision for San
oportunidad
Anselmo
para
and why I believe
compartir
I'm
mi
the right
visión para
candidate
San
to lead
Anselmo y
our
por qué creo que
county.
yo soy el
Here's
candidato
the thing.
apropiado.
It's time for San Anselmo to embrace new
Es hora
voices
que
and
San
fresh ideas
Anselmo
that represent
tenga
our
nuevas
future.
voces
We
y
can't
nuevas
cling to the past and
ideas para
preserve
planear
San
el
Anselmo
futuro.
in amber.
No
We must
podemos
build San
mantener
Anselmo
el
ready for
pasado y
2025,
ponerlo
2030,
a
and
la
beyond.
ciudad en un
Why?
amber.
Because when I look at San Anselmo,
¿Por qué?
I
Porque
see
cuando veo a San
unbounded but
Anselmo
untapped potential.
veo
Potential
mucho
to evolve into
potencial
the
que no
community
ha
we
sido
aspire
tocado.
to be.
Una
Town is
comunidad que
amazing, but it
aspiramos a
cannot and
ser.
should not be taken
Nuestro
for
town
granted.
es
It
maravilloso, pero
requires
no
intentional
podemos
effort to create a San
tomarlo
Anselmo that's safe,
por
resilient,
granted.
livable, affordable, and thriving.
Queremos que sea
What do
un
we do
lugar para
better?
vivir,
We
que
can
se
better let our
pueda
young
ser
families who are the
accesible.
backbone of our community struggle
Necesitamos
to
una
safely
ciudad
navigate our
mejor,
streets
en un
or
mundo
face
mejor,
unnecessary hurdles when trying to receive a
mejorar
building
las
permit. We
calles
can do better
y
for our
no
small businesses
tener
so we can
tanta
overcome
barrera cuando
rising
queramos
costs and make them
construir
easier
un
for them to open
edificio.
their doors. We
Que
can do
sea
better
más
for our first
fácil abrir
responders in terms of
negocios,
trips
abrir
for
sus
emergencies
puertas
and
para
able to leave closer than
restaurantes
2
y
hours
estar
away.
listos para una
We can do better by
emergencia.
investing in our parks, which are essential to our
Podíamos
quality of life. We can do better
invertir
by
más en
committing to
nuestros
affordable
parques
housing,
y
so that San
sería
Anselmo
bueno
can welcome people from diverse
invertir
backgrounds within our communities
en la
longer. And we
vivienda
can do better
para
to prepare
poder
for the inevitable impacts of climate
lograr que
change.
San Anselmo sea
I
diverso.
bring more than 20 years of
Yo traigo
experience in
más de
fundraising
20
and
años
nonprofit
de
management and now
experiencia
serve as a
en
technology
recaudar
ethicist
fondos
in my
para
role as senior
organizaciones
director
sin
of
fines
responsible
lucrativos y
artificial
mi
intelligence.
récord
That
tiene
combination
mucha
of
responsabilidad
experiences gives me the
económica
unique
de
ability to
presupuesto.
bridge worlds that need to come together for us to
Y
succeed.
tenemos que
I'm
unir
proud to
estos
be on
mundos
boards like the
diferentes
Marin
para que
IJ,
podamos
the
tener
Sierra
éxito.
Club, the
El
Marin
Sierra
Professional
Club, el Marine
Firefighters, the Marin
IJ,
County Young Democrats, the Northfield
los
Labor Council, and
bomberos,
current council members and former
el
mayors Brian
Departamento
Severe, Steve Burdo,
de
and Lester
labor
Steinman.
y de
They
trabajo,
believe in my
todos
ability to steer
creen
San
en mi
Anselmo towards a new
habilidad
chapter, and I think they do
para
too.
manejar a la ciudad en
Thanks so
lugar
much.
mejor.
And now, finally, Chantel.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to the league. Thank you to the chamber.
Gracias
I
a
am running for office as a continuation of the work that I've done in Marin and in our town. I have significant experience as a small business owner, which I have now. I've raised my children in our town and love our town. I have skills in policy development, implementation, and evaluation at the most senior levels of government in local government. And I have had a track record of accentuating work that is difficult in sometimes, but where we can totally come together as a group. So, for example, I served as our assistant county librarian, sharing information. I worked with our town, San Anselmo, on fair housing. Over the last 20 years, there are many things I've been able to do, including working with cultural institutions in our town and religious institutions in the mode of COVID recovery. So much has changed. My key priorities are our community's economic vibrance. A lot is going well for our small businesses, and there's more that we can do around expediting certain services. Emergency preparedness. I live in a high fire risk zone on Bald Hill and have significant experience as someone who grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, and understands how cross generational and cross jurisdictional work comes together about flood, as well as looking at community connectedness and serving teens. I have been endorsed by the County of Marin Democratic Party only candidate, by four of the supervisors in San Anselmo, five of the supervisors, and 4 members of the town council, the North Bay Labor Council. This demonstrates my ability to do community engagement, to bridge communities, and to work well with others. I hope to gain your vote.
Thank you, Chantel.
Comunidades.
Okay, and now
Gracias,
for
Chantel.
questions.
Ahora las
We're gonna begin
preguntas.
the questions with
Vamos a
Ford.
comenzar con
And
Ford.
question 1 is,
La primera
San Anselmo
pregunta,
facing
San Anselmo
challenges
enfrenta
around
desafíos en
affordable
torno a
housing
la
and tenant
vivienda
protection,
asequible y la protección de los
particularly in light of
inquilinos debido al
increasing rental
aumento de los
prices.
precios de
How do you
alquiler.
think the town
¿Cómo
can
cree que
address
la
the
ciudad
need for
puede abordar la
affordable housing
necesidad de
while maintaining
viviendas
healthy
asequibles y al
rental
mismo
market that
tiempo
supports
mantener un
both
mercado de
tenants
alquiler
and landlords?
saludable que respalde tanto a los inquilinos como a los propietarios?
And go ahead and unmute.
Sorry about that. It's got to be one step at a time.
Un paso, uno primero, paso a paso.
We've got 2 rent control
Tenemos
measures on our ballot
control de
this time around,
vivienda
neither one of which
razonable
are
y las
reasonable. They're bad
propuestas en la
legislation. Now,
baleta
what
no
makes
son
the
razonables.
legislation bad is that it
La
divides our community
legislación
inasmuch
divide a
as it puts the
a nuestro
onus of
pueblo, nuestra
providing
ciudad,
affordable housing on small mom and pop landlords.
y,
It draws the line at
y,
2.
y- y-
If there are
y
3 or more,
ataca a
then
los
they're within the scope of
dueños
the rent control.
de
The cap
propiedades
is at
pequeños
60% with no pass-through for
y
utilities
pone
unless you've got
un límite de
a separate meter,
60%.
most of which don't have. So what the difficulty is
Lo
that
difícil
rent
es
control as
que el
proposed
control
gouges
de
mom
la
and pop
renta como
landlords
está
instead
propuesta
of the big corporations
no
that it
ayuda
aims
a
at
los
addressing.
dueños
The
pequeños de
Democratic Socialists of
propiedades.
America have gone too far with this
Y
legislation. They're
los
not as bad as the
demócratas
communities
socialistas han
subsidized by mom and
hecho
pops whose rentals
mal
are
en
their
estas propuestas.
retirement nest egg.
Thank you. Okay, Chris,
Gracias.
you're up next.
So my son's teachers at Wade Thomas,
Maestros
my
de
son's a 3rd grader, not one of them has lived locally to
Co-
date. Everyone is driven from afar. It's a huge source of our local emissions. So yeah, I'd like there to be more affordable housing in town for our workforce.
viven
And
lejos.
I think the way to do that is to more aggressively partner with the private sector as needs be to actually build that. And I think the type of affordable housing that's most commensurate with our community's scale
Las
is small scale, sort of, we have on the books in state law, build up to 4 units per parcel. I have neighbors who are mom and pop landlords who are interested in pursuing that. I think that the ticket is to figure out how to partner with people that own property, including the school district and others, as Nevada was doing, and work towards a world where we're actually making things happen in collaboration with the private sector. That's going to be necessary for that to succeed.
Creo que va a ser necesario
Okay, thank you.
ser privado.
Next is Guy. Guy, please unmute.
Guy,
Yeah, we, in San Anselmo, we're living in
en San
probably one of
Anselmo
the more
estamos viviendo
desirable communities
probablemente en una de
in
las
California,
comunidades más
and
queridas
many people know
en
about us in here, but
California.
they'd want to be here too.
Todo el mundo
we
quiere
have,
estar aquí.
around 40 or 50 apartment houses
Tenemos 40 o
surrounding
50
downtown.
casas alrededor de del
Know
centro de
it
la
is
ciudad.
very expensive to live
Sé
here.
que es muy caro
I
vivir
have
aquí.
found ways
He encontrado
adapt to allow
maneras de
homeowners
adaptar pero no soy
do
un
not
dueño de
believe
casa.
that the
No creo
Measure
que
O or Measure N
la
are of good value to the town
medida
of San
8, la
Anselmo.
proposición
I think
O o M,
it's too much of a
son
burden.
buenas,
I think
no
we're
son buenas
leading
para
the
San
wrong
Anselmo.
path.
Crean un
When
camino
a
equivocado
landlord has to be
cuando un
give back,
dueño de
somebody leaves
propiedad,
their place
cuando
and
alguien se va de
over
su lugar,
4 years gone, has to come
han
back to
pasado
the
4
same apartment.
años
It's a
y,
complication that
y
does
es
not
una
benefit
complicación
San
porque
Anselmo.
no beneficia a San
Thank you.
Anselmo.
And Yoav, you're next.
The young families I know who've moved to San Anselmo in the last 5, 6, 7 years look around San Anselmo and say, why is San Anselmo not more reflective of my values? Why does it not look like the places from where I have come? New York, Los Angeles, Seattle, Austin, these places that are rich, multicultural, socioeconomically diverse places. In order to achieve that, we need to do both affordable housing development as well as rent stabilization efforts to ensure that we have community stability and that we're able to provide the resources and opportunities for everyone. So that means doing dense multifamily housing development in the flats where there's easy access to public transportation and core services, and at the same time ensure that we are instituting reasonable rent control through Measure N in order to assure people that their rent will not double in the 7 years that the California state rent control ordinance would allow. That is unsustainable for families with children in the public schools or for older adults looking to age in place. We need both affordable housing and rent control.
Todos
Thank
necesitamos
you. And next is Chantel.
y a
Y
la
ahora
el
San
control
Chantel.
del
Anselmo must
San
address our
Anselmo
housing needs. I
debe
have 25
enfrentar las
years of
necesidades de la
experience in
vivienda.
housing
Tengo
development,
25
finance,
años
and
de
grant making.
experiencia
We must
desarrollando
look at our
vivienda y
families,
dando
workforce, and
fondos.
older adults through an
Tenemos que
environmentally
ayudar a
sustainable
familias y
lens.
gentes
I like
mayores de edad.
solutions like
A mí me
infill,
gustan
maybe in the US Bank building,
soluciones
housing linked to
como
public transportation.
ocupar
Also,
edificios que
helping
no
to
están
reduce the housing
ocupados,
crisis
ayudar a
and
reducir la
minimizing
crisis
environmental
de
impact.
vivienda,
Building affordable housing with
reduciendo el
protections is
impacto
important. Rental regulation is
climáticos y del
important.
medio
On the
ambiente.
council, as a council member,
Las
I have an
regulaciones son
experience in Marin
importantes.
developing
Tengo
housing to
experiencia en
carefully
Marín
assess our
desarrollando
housing
vivienda
options, to
que
work across
asesora nuestras
constituencies to
opciones
bring out a
de
balanced
vivienda
approach to
para
housing
traer
that adds more,
una manera
allows for protection,
balanceada
and makes sure
que
that every step of the
provee
way
una
we're
manera
listening
de
to
dar
San Anselmo
protección.
residents who want
Escuchemos
to
a los
stay in
residentes de
our
San
vibrant
Anselmo que quieren
communities.
quedarse en nuestra comunidad vibrante.
And Eileen? Please unmute.
So I was on the Housing Element and Advisory Committee for our town, and I helped identify where it makes more sense to add infill housing. And I'm currently on the General Plan Advisory Committee, planning for our future the next 25 to 50 years. So I'm already involved in this issue. I believe we can add some housing, but we need to do it in a way that preserves our character, doesn't overburden our services, and is mindful of traffic and emergency impact. I also believe that at some point, we reach carrying capacity and that adding more people is a detriment to our quality of life, and that balance is important. I support public housing, and I think that we'll see school districts and municipalities building housing for their workforces, and we're starting to see it around the state now. And I think San Anselmo can partner with other agencies and nonprofits to do that. I know we can't attract police officers, for example. We're down 8 officers because they can't afford to live in this area. And I think building workforce housing for our employees is important.
Creo que construir
Thank you so much.
es muy
Okay,
importante.
we're going to move on to question 2, and Kurt will start off answering question 2. And the question is, as San Anselmo strives to foster greater diversity and equity, what specific actions would you prioritize to address existing inequities and ensure that the town is a welcoming and inclusive place for all residents?
Inclusivo para todos
I
los
think
residentes.
that starts with building on
Creo
the work
eso
that's already been
comienza
done at
en
the town of creating a commission to look at this issue.
agregándole al trabajo que ya ha
and doing
sido
top
hecho
to bottom sort of metrics about where
y
we are and where
hacer
we need to go.
medidas para
And
saber
then
a
when we
dónde
think going
estamos y a
forward
dónde
about every
vamos.
decision which is being made,
Tenemos que
that
ver cada
becomes a
decisión
lens
que
by
ha
which you
hecho
make a decision about
para que
how to
podamos
proceed,
decidir
whether
con ese
obviously the
lente.
big ticket items are typically hiring
El
and
problema
whatnot.
grande
But
es el
Going
emplear
forward,
a
it's a
las
matter of taking
personas,
that consideration
pero al salir
in every
adelante es
decision
tomar
on
todas
thinking about
estas
how to
cosas en
proceed.
consideración para saber en qué
Thank you.
dirección vamos a ir.
And Guy, you are next. Please unmute.
I think
Yo creo
we're
que
dealing with America in
estamos
2024.
lidiando con
We inherited a
2021, hemos
very
dado
aggressive, fantastic system. It's called the capitalist system. We
That-
buy, we
un capitalismo
sell, we try to survive, we make money.
de
To me, the equity issue
dinero,
is not about race. It's
entonces
about
no es
big
hacer la
money.
masa, es
And
hacer
that,
dinero.
unfortunately, I don't
Desafortunadamente,
know of the
no sé
crowbar except by people
cómo podríamos hacer
being local,
conceptos de
staying local,
la gente se
hanging in there through the changes of the time. Perhaps is co-op housing that could be done. Perhaps perhaps a citizen should get together and we could buy apartment complexes.
las
But, you
podríamos
know, I have to look at this dense multi-housing proposals of
hablamos
Bob and I think some of my newer candidates.
hacer más caro.
This is not the town we want to be. This is
pueblo
not
que
going to solve the
no
environmental problems of the
resolver los
planet.
problemas del medio ambiente para
Thank
nuestro
you, Guy. And next is Yoav.
Yoav,
Look, so doing the work of diversity,
haciendo el
equity, and
trabajo de
inclusion, I will add
diversidad
justice
e inclusión,
to that list.
tengo que agregar
Requires hard
la
work,
justicia
and it
a esa
requires
lista y eso
actually setting
requiere
targets and then
trabajo muy
reporting on those
duro
targets. It's not enough to just
y,
talk about
y
things. You
poner
actually have to say what you're gonna start and then
medidas y
report on your
reportar
progress
en
against them.
esas
So we're
medidas.
talking about, as Kurt
Si
mentioned,
estamos hablando,
hiring
como
targets,
dijo
for
Kurt,
example, and expanding the diversity of our
targets,
workforce in San
poner
Anselmo, then we need to
metas.
say, what are we
Tenemos
actually
que
looking to
decir
achieve?
qué es lo que
What
estamos
kind of
tratando de
diversity do
hacer,
we in fact
qué
want,
tipo
and
de
how are we
diversidad
tracking toward
queremos
that in a
y
year-over-year basis?
mantenemos,
Secondly, I will
medimos
say that
ese
we need to,
crecimiento
in order
paso a
to
paso.
truly do diversity,
Segundo,
equity,
para
inclusion,
poder
and
hacer este
justice,
tipo
address
de
housing
trabajo
justice,
de
which
equidad
means
y
workforce
justicia,
housing and sustainable development
tenemos
in
que
order to ensure
construir
that our
vivienda
community can
para
actually
asegurarnos que
react
nuestra
to and
comunidad
embrace people
pueda
with difference and from a
aceptar
diverse set of
y,
backgrounds.
y
If
vivir
we
con la,
just
convivir con la
observe
gente
the
de
covenants
diferentes
and restrictive deed
eh,
covenants of 50, 60, 70
historias
years ago, we will never
y
change.
grupos étnicos, si no,
Thank
nunca
you.
vamos a cambiar.
Chantel?
Community connectedness is one of the core platforms that I have, and equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging with intentionality is part of what's at the heart of San Anselmo, but the intentionality needs to expand it. We have resources to bring to this conversation already in place. Our racial equity committee, activating that, supporting it through the town. I wrote the diversity, equity, and inclusion curriculum for the County of Marin that staff were trained on. We have communications opportunities that we can work on. In addition to racial equity, I would look at older adults and how we're supporting them in their needs across the lifetime, as well as teens. I raised my children here, and we have many positive, powerful opportunities, but hearing the voices of teens, intentional inclusion, and leveraging the opportunities in our existing racial justice committee, as well as working with older adults so that they can age in place as renters or as homeowners is very important.
Los mayores tengan
And Eileen?
Yes,
Aileen.
since I've been on the council, we've actually
Desde
established
que
a
yo he
racial
estado en
equity
el Consejo
commission.
Municipal,
So we have taken that step, and they've
hemos
reviewed
hecho
all of
esos
our town
pasos.
ordinances to see where we
Todos
can make
hemos
change. The
tenido
truth is, the town can't necessarily
propuestas
attract
para hacer ese
other
cambio,
races or people that are more
pero
diverse,
nuestro
but we
lugar
can have an impact
no
in hiring,
necesariamente
and we
puede
can make ourselves
atraer a
welcome.
gente diversa,
And I
pero
think
sí
we are
podemos
making an
ser
effort to do that. You know,
una ciudad que da la
every year
bienvenida a todos.
celebrate against hate.
Cada año
We try to be
celebramos
as
en
welcoming
contra
as we
del
can, but we
odio,
can't make people move here.
pero no
And I
podemos
think it
hacer que la
plays
gente
a
se
critical
mueva
mass.
aquí.
You know, you have to have a certain number of members of a
Tenemos que
particular
tener
race to make
cierto
other members of
número
that race want to move to an
de
area. And over time,
de un
that
grupo
will get
étnico
there,
para
but we
que
aren't there
puedan
yet. I'm
sentirse
pursuing it.
otros de esa raza cómodos regresando, viniendo a vivir aquí.
Yes, I'm a believer in leading by example.
creo que
And when I was on the town council, we did that in terms of hiring women, in terms of hiring persons from not white races.
personas no son
We
de
hired a woman to run our streets department, and one of my biggest joys in life was to watch Rachel Calvert ride herd on the gelati guys who were improving streets.
son parte
We
de
have
mejorar las
a
calles.
problem in San Anselmo as being
Anselmo,
perhaps the whitest
quizás la
community
comunidad más
in
blanca
California.
en California.
That's changing. That change is slow. And I agree with what Eileen said. You can't force it, but you can lead by example, and you can lead by hiring. And another thing that we did too was to look over and make sure we got rid of all restrictive covenants based on race for the transfer of property, which has been
Basado
over time has been a major means of discrimination.
Thank you.
las casas con el
Okay,
tiempo.
we're going to move on to question 3. And
La
for question
pregunta
three, we're
3,
gonna begin with Guy.
vamos
The
a comenzar
question
con
is,
Guy.
please explain which
Explique
actions you
qué
would take as a
acciones
member of the
tomaría
town
como miembro
council
del
to support the
ayuntamiento
town's small
para apoyar a
businesses
las
and as a
pequeñas empresas de
prospective
la
member of
ciudad.
the town
Como posible
council.
miembro del
How do
Consejo
you
Municipal o
propose to-
Ayuntamiento,
how do
¿cómo
you propose
propone
including
incluir
San Anselmo
a los
merchants in
comerciantes de San
decision-making that
Anselmo en la
impacts
toma
the
de
town's
decisiones que
business
impacta a la
community?
comunidad empresarial de la ciudad?
And go ahead and unmute, Guy.
I say certainly one thing
Quiero
is
decir
extremely
que
important
una
would be
cosa que es muy
not to be removing
importante
any parking spaces from
es no
downtown,
quitar ningún estacionamiento
to
del downtown, del
help
centro,
the merchants
sino que
by,
ayudar a los comerciantes.
I would like to see
Quiero ver
an audit of the
una
town's
auditoría
policies and
de las
permits. This is
pólizas
not necessarily
de la
this is like for
ciudad.
a beginning business starting in town.
Es como
I'm
para
afraid that
cuando
so many
uno
codes and
comienza un
practices have built
negocio
up over
y
the years
asesora.
that they're
El-
not
Creo que algunas
easy to
prácticas que
open
han
up a
sido en el
business. It's
pasado
not easy to just
no es
get your own
fácil
home
abrir
the
un negocio.
necessary improvements.
No es
I
fácil
would like to see a
mejorar,
local audit, not
poner
maybe
mejoras a
just
su
local
casa.
merchants perhaps could be on a commission, take a look at
Tal
this
vez
situation.
los
In
dueños
general,
de negocios pueden ser
it's a
parte de una
great town. I think we
comisión.
need to just
Es un
become even more
es
and
un
more
pueblo,
local.
una
I'm a
ciudad
farmer. I don't own
maravillosa.
a car. I recommend it for
Yo
everybody
no
from a
tengo
plant.
carro.
It's good fun, and
Recomiendo
you will help your merchants.
que es bueno no tener carro.
You all for
Ayudará a los
Our small
comerciantes.
businesses are thriving and struggling at the same time.
Mm.
There are businesses on San Anselmo Avenue whose rent has been doubled overnight who are not resilient to that kind of rent increase. So in order to really transform our thriving business district, we need to do a couple of things. First of all, we need to cut the red tape. Opening a business in San Anselmo, getting into the ground, receiving the planning and building permits in order to improve your space and actually get open is an arcane, arduous, and impossible task for many businesses. We need process navigators to help those businesses navigate the challenges. We also need to provide small business grants or funding for those who are squeezed out due to rising rents in order to ensure that they're resilient to those kinds of changes. That could be in the form of grants and opportunities for landlords who institute green building practices, who make tenant improvements. There's all sorts of ways that we can support those businesses to ensure that their rents aren't doubled overnight and that they are able to open quickly and serve our residents more easily.
Thank you. And Chantel, you're next.
Santel.
Más
San
fácil.
Anselmo is an economically
San
vibrant
Anselmo
community. We're a
es
hub
una
for residents and visitors
comunidad
alike.
vibrante
And our
donde
community continues
y nuestra
to attract.
comunidad
To keep our businesses healthy, there are a
continúa
couple
de
of things that we
atraer
need to do, and there are even
otros
programs
negocios
underway
y unas
that I'd
cosas
like
que
to promote
podemos
while we're under
hacer
the
y que ya
council,
están
while
en
on the
camino.
council and under the council's auspices. One is permitting. I've heard
Primero,
significant input from businesses. Permitting
permitir
takes longer than is
que
feasible for smaller
el sacar
mid-sized
permisos para
businesses.
abrir
Our
negocios
staff team is very
toma mucho
strong, very
tiempo,
strong
tiene que
group who can
mejorarse.
look at expediters, look at
Se
different
pueden
purchased
maneras de
projects.
acelerar
For new
esto.
entrepreneurs, we need to continue
Para
this
nuevos
conversation, maybe on a
empresarios es
monthly
bueno
or bi-monthly
continuar
basis
esta
about how to
conversación
navigate
de
our
cómo
town. We
navegamos
need to
nuestra
look at
ciudad.
opportunities to reduce
Tenemos que ver
barriers to
oportunidad para
access to
reducir
information.
barreras a
And we
acceso a
need to make sure that that
información
conversation
y
is
tenemos que
ongoing,
asegurarnos
not
que
just
esa
in our core
información,
downtown, but let's
comunicación
extend it also
esté
from
continua,
Ross
no solo en
Avenue all the
downtown,
way to
pero
Lenox.
también de
Let's make
Ross
sure that those
Avenue para
smaller
allá.
districts are also
y que todos los
expedited, supported,
distritos,
and conversation.
los distritos pequeños
Thank you.
también
And Eileen?
You
sean
know, I find this
incluidos.
question kind of amusing because just yesterday we had a recap meeting about Live on the Avenue and invited the public, candidates, and any merchants downtown to come and talk about what worked, what didn't, how can we support small businesses. And I was the only one there. I didn't see any one of the other candidates there. So Live on the Avenue is one thing we do to support small businesses, and it's been a huge success. Our downtown businesses have asked for lights over San Anselmo Avenue for years, and I think we can do that. I think making sure we maintain parking in town is important. I think having additional events is also really important. We had a sip and stroll that was great. Our Bootacular that's coming up is very popular and successful for businesses. So the town can support events that then in turn help support our businesses, and we should keep doing that.
La ciudad y vamos a
Thank you. Ford, you are next.
Okay, thank you.
Ford,
The first thing
gracias.
that I would do is
Lo primero que
Live on the
haría
Avenue, which has been a
en
great
conexión con Light in the Avenue, que has
clearing
tenido un
out
gran
the avenue at
éxito,
4:30, which
es que
hurts
empezar
retail
a
businesses,
despejar
makes
la
a
avenida a
difference in
las 4:30
businesses downtown
daña
between
a
retail
los
and
comerciantes.
and where the restaurants benefit
Los
from something
restaurantes
like
se
Live on the Avenue, which
benefician,
has been a great success.
que ha sido un
Retail
gran
doesn't. And
éxito.
so I would shut
Ha sido
down
un
the
gran
avenue the
éxito
way
para
it was when
restaurantes,
I
pero
was
no
on the
para las
council at
tiendas.
5:30, not at
Yo
4:30.
me gustaría hacerlo a
Also,
las 5:30, no a las 4:30.
get our
Y
Creek Park Plaza
lucharía
back. It's
porque
currently
nuestra
locked up with a
plaza
chain
de
link fence,
Creekside
on the basis
esté
allegedly
abierta
that
otra vez.
it's about
Ahorita
to
hay
fall
una
down or
fence
an earthquake it would. And
supuestamente
that was
porque
only
puede
after the county
caerse,
shopped around and
pero
got
eso
a
es
fourth expert opinion
solamente
saying so after
hasta el
having received
condado
3 that said
buscó
no, it
expertos,
was
pero
fine.
3 dijeron que
The
estaba
plaza
bien.
is an important
La
link between
plaza
Creek
es
Park and
una
our downtown,
importante
which means
conexión
drivers try to
entre el
get that back
downtown
also.
y el parque.
Thank you. And Kurt, you're up next.
So like many, I go to Live on the Avenue with my family and also appreciate the other events that have started to populate the calendar. The Halloween event to go to with my son, the holiday event downtown. I think that would be useful to continue building on what's already been successful. My next door neighbor is Ryan Scott, who's had a very difficult time getting his new business started down at Yolonsdale Station. What should have been very quick has turned into 18 months, years and years and years. I was a small business owner myself for 10 years, have worked on cutting red tape. I would start with a hearing to hear directly from some of the small businesses and specifically what their experiences have been with the town to see if we can do a better job of supporting the people who are creating new businesses and adding vibrancy to our community based on the conversations I've had with some small business entrepreneurs in the food industry, also a new industry downtown that's been struggling. I think we can do better.
Thank you. So for question 4, we're going to begin with Yoav. And that question is, there have been a number of racist and anti-Semitic incidents in San Anselmo that do not seem to be acknowledged, let alone addressed. What is your level of awareness of these incidents? How do you propose bringing visibility and solutions to these problems in the community?
Soluciones a estos problemas.
I am very aware.
Estoy muy consciente de estos incidentes.
A proud Jew. I am
Soy
proud supporter of Israel,
muy
and
orgulloso
I've
de
been
ser
subject and
judío.
targeted
He
with anti-Semitic incidents,
sido
and that's myself in my life.
un target para
And it
esto.
is unacceptable
No es
in
aceptable
every way,
en
and we need
cualquier
to address it
manera
and root out the
y
causes of
tenemos
the
que
anti-Semitic incidents
enfrentarlo y
and
buscar
to
las
very
causas
patriotic
raíces de
and
este tipo de
vehement
comportamiento.
rhetoric that is targeted at
Eh,
members of the Jewish
el
community for
vocabulario
personal
y
political
los
purposes and for
ataques
their
con las
identity.
personas
I talked
judías
earlier
ha
about needing
sido
to do
horrible.
better. This is an area where
Ya he
it's
hablado
a very
antes de la
substantive
necesidad de
fundamental
mejorar en
problem
esto
happening in our
y esto
town.
es algo en que yo
And
quiero
I
empujar
know
mucho.
many others who
Sé
do
que
as well.
muchos otros
So,
que también
in
se
order to
sienten
address
de la
that
misma
and
manera y
that
para
legacy
poder
of hate,
enfrentar
we
eso
need to
y
do wide community
tenemos que
education
hacer
and
educación a
begin
nivel
also in the schools
amplia
to address
y
through
también en las
curricular
escuelas
interventions,
usando
teaching about the
currículo
history of
y
anti-Semitism
enseñar
and its
sobre la
impact on members
historia
of the
de
Jewish community.
antisemitismo.
Thank you. Chantel?
I am very aware of racist and anti-Semitic tones,
También
actions, concerns. not only because I have observed them in our community, but because I've sought out people to understand multiple perspectives, and folks have sought me out knowing my background in cross-cultural communications and writing curriculum, especially for adults, to look at equity, diversity, and inclusion. One of the reasons that I've talked about in this campaign throughout my work as a volunteer and my work as a professional, but particularly in this campaign, intentional inclusion, because skills building, conversations that take down the tone of the rhetoric are very important, and opportunities to craft who we want to be now. We must continue to talk to one another, and we must move forward opportunities for everyone to learn without being divisive.
Oportunidades para aprender.
Thank you. And Eileen?
Yeah, so we've had a number of events. I mean,
Hemos
of
tenido un
incidents
número
in
de
our community.
eventos,
Some of them
incidentes en
racial,
nuestra
some of them
comunidad,
anti-Semitic. We saw in
algunos
Springdale,
racistas,
there
otros
was an attack on a
antisemáticos.
statue, at
Fue
a
un
Catholic church.
ataque
We have
en,
addressed these
en una
issues,
estatua
in our town.
en
We
una
called them
iglesia
out. We
católica.
stood for anti-hate.
Hemos
We are a
denunciado
no-hate
este tipo de
community.
eventos.
I
Somos
had
una
a personally
comunidad
had a bomb
sin
threat at
odio.
my home. So
Yo
I
tuve
personally understand what it's like.
personalmente una amenaza de bombas en mi
We have
casa.
a racial equity committee, and we
Tenemos un comité de equidad racial y están teniendo liderazgo de cómo enfrentar estos asuntos. Estamos abiertos a todas las opiniones. Hemos tenido nuestra biblioteca amenazada en los speakers. Y lo que tenemos que hacer es ponerle luz a estas cosas, y todo el mundo tiene que respetar el primer mandamiento de la Constitución.
De acuerdo. Need to have
Necesitamos
policy and an attitude and an approach where everybody has a voice. We had a hate speech incident at Memorial Park.
Tuvimos
about 4
una
years ago.
experiencia de
I
odio
was among
hace
the people
4
that
años y yo fui una de
against
las
that.
personas que
I
protestó en
spoke,
contra de eso.
against the
hablé
racist
contra
tagging that took place at
Eh,
Memorial Park, and there's really no
También
reason for it.
estuve en contra de esa
Also
escritura
really
que
hard
hubo,
as people
graffiti
become
en el
more
Parque
more
Memorial.
polarized,
Nuestra gente se está
and more
convirtiendo
intransigent
más
in the positions that they hold.
polarizada
And
en las
I
posiciones
think
que
that
tienen. Y
the
creo
remedy
que
to that
el
is
remedio
not
para eso
suppression
no
from
es
any point of
supresión
view,
de ningún
but
punto de
to
vista,
enhance the opportunity
pero
to
mejorar la
communicate.
oportunidad
And
de
the
comunicar.
town, in my
El-
building in 2003 came
La
and
ciudad en
removed
mi
a
edificio
political sign I had in the side of the building. I
tú
sued the town
tú
and
no me
won.
dejó poner
So there's
un
a
rótulo
basis in
y yo
San
le metí
Anselmo
un a la
where we need
ciudad.
to do more work,
Tenemos
and
que
we've done some good work so
hacer
far.
mejor trabajo y hemos
Thank
hecho un
you.
buen trabajo
usted-
hasta ahora.
You're next.
So this is really hard. Last year at Wade Thomas, there was a swastika on the wall at Wade Thomas that prompted a conversation amongst parents and teachers in the community. I was hard pressed to explain to a second grader, the cultural sort of baggage which got us to where we are today that was manifest in that swastika on the wall. So I don't know what the right answer is. My gut is it's just more education, although it's like the question is, at what point do you start really talking to kids? I would guess like at an educational level, you get into high school and you really start getting into it. But this is a systemic problem across everywhere, and I don't know what the right answer is.
Okay, thank you. And Guy, please unmute.
Okay, well, as a New Englander who's 50% Jewish and was bar mitzvahed,
Como
I
indígena
have to say,
por ciento de
yeah,
judíos
I'm
que
a
tuvo
little bit
bar mitzvah.
ignorant, except for the blasts of anger that's floating around because of political stuff and people
Entiendo
dying in the Middle East.
política, hablando mucho
I'm ignorant of
en el Medio Oriente.
of whatever this hatred, the anti-hatred movement. I'm just a guy from the 60s. I mean, that was all about only love could conquer hate. And, I think we have to give everybody a lot of room on this planet. to have political differences
para
and not
tener
necessarily
las
take them to be
no
hate. You
necesariamente
know, it's always the enemy is always the
ser
one who's hating, and we're always the one who's
que está
just
odiando,
really nice.
pues, buenos.
You know, it's and
No,
children act out swastikas. I think it's just
ah,
ignorance, and only light can bring these
el-
everybody out of that. Thank you.
ignorancia.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Okay, for question 5, we're going to begin with Chantel.
Para
And
la
the
pregunta
question
5
is,
vamos a
last
comenzar
year,
con
San
Chantel.
Anselmo
El año
residents
pasado, los
voted to
residentes de
exit
San
from
Anselmo
Zone 9
votaron a favor de
protected areas.
salir del control de
Since it
inundaciones
passed,
de la
nothing has
zona
been
9.
done to protect the
Desde que se
downtown
aprobó, no
for
se ha hecho nada
25
para
years
proteger
until
nuestro
it
centro de
flooded.
las inundaciones
What
de
are
los
your ideas
25
for
años.
mitigating the
¿Cuáles son sus ideas
risk
para
of other
mitigar el
damage
riesgo de
and
otro evento
considering
dañino,
that the last one was
considerando
in
que el último fue en el
2005 and the
2005,
clock is really
por lo
ticking
que el
now?
tiempo realmente está
Thank
corriendo
you.
ahora?
We need a reset. Right now, in exiting
Tenemos que volver a
conversations, we do
comenzar.
not have a voice at the table,
Ahorita
but
no
our phones
tenemos
push
una
them to the
vez,
table.
una voz
We
en la
need to
mesa.
continue to look
Tenemos
at
que
where are the
continuar
opportunities to
de ver
build
cuáles son las
new
oportunidades para
relationships
construir
with
nuevas
the jurisdictions
relaciones
around us,
entre
with
las
the counties, with
jurisdicciones alrededor
our
nuestro,
downstream
el
neighbors in
condado,
Ross, our upstream neighbors
nuestros
in Fairfax.
vecinos
And what I bring
en
to this
Ross y
conversation
nuestros
is not
vecinos
only
en
growing up in
Fairfax.
Louisiana and having a significant amount of personal
Yo crecí
experience
en
around
Luisiana
flood
y tengo
policy, the
experiencia
impact of flood
con
mitigation.
póliza
We will
de
not win this war,
inundaciones.
but we can do better. The relationships
Podemos
and
mejorar
experience that I
las
bring of knitting together jurisdictions and
relaciones que
with you will
tengo
be very helpful
con
to the
gente nos
council
va a
as we begin
ayudar
to
mucho
repair these
al
relationships
consejo, al
and take
ayuntamiento,
action,
para
while
que
also
podamos tomar
auditing some of
acción
what we could have done better in the
mientras
past
podemos
to
ver
make sure that the
cosas que
next amount of funds
podíamos
that we spend
haber hecho
it
mejor en el pasado.
collectively and we spend
Tenemos
it
que
with a very
pasar
strong eye to
tiempo
monitoring how these funds are
colectivamente
spent.
y monitoreando cómo se
Eileen.
gastan esos
Yeah,
fondos.
so I live in the flood zone. I'm 100 yards from ground zero, and I pay flood insurance annually.
Los
Flood zone 9 was a failure for San Anselmo, and our residents told us that they wanted to get out because $15 million was wasted. So for
fallos
those who think we shouldn't have got out, you're not listening to our residents. That's what they wanted.
seguir
There was no collaboration with the towns. They proposed detention basins in Fairfax and San Anselmo that were voted down by the residents. There
siendo,
are things we can do related to flooding, however.
pero podemos
We
hacer más cosas.
require elevation if you live in the flood zone. We can,
Damos relación si
we've installed floodgates at downtown businesses. We have bioswales. We can keep our creek clean.
tener
And we can reinvent the flood zone on the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. And I've already started talking to other council members in other towns about how we do that to get ahead of when they exit flood zone 9 in 2027, which everyone thinks is inevitable. So yes, I believe that we still need to have regional flood mitigation, but flood zone 9 and that model was a failure.
pero lo que
Thank
se
you,
hizo
Eileen. Ford, you're next.
falló en
Thank you. There isn't
Por
going to be
usted
any
sigue.
amount of
Gracias.
funds
No hay ninguna
incoming
manera,
this time
ningún
around.
total de
The flood
dinero
fee
que
was
viene
enacted
para
by the
poder
voters in
ayudar.
consequence of really some
Esto
manipulation
fue
by the
eh,
county for
votado por
20 years
los
in
votantes.
2007.
En el
It was earmarked $60
2007
million. That money
dieron
is
60
expiring in
millones
3
de
years.
dólares
At
y
this
ese dinero
point,
se acaba
we've
en 3
wasted
años.
$52
Hemos
million
malgastado
and have
52
very little
millones
to show
hasta
for it.
ahora y tenemos
The
muy
planning
poco que
has been
enseñar por lo que se ha
abominable.
hecho. El
At the
planeamiento ha
outset,
sido horrible.
what the operating assumption
Desde el
was that
principio de lo que
detention basins
tocaba
were going to be
operar,
the cure to everything, but there was never
pensamos
any
que iba a haber,
analysis
teníamos la
about
cura
whether
para
or not the
todo,
people
pero
would
no
want those
había
detention
ningún
basins, and they
análisis
didn't.
si habían
People had an
maneras
initiative
de
and voted
hacerlo.
it down in San Anselmo. I was
Y
the one
luego
council member
las
that stood up
iniciativas,
against the other council members
la ciudad
with
votaron
respect
en
to that.
contra.
So
Y yo
while
fui el
it's
único que
complicated
protesté.
and it's controlled by
Es
FEMA, there's
complicado y
very little that we
controlado
can do
por
before
FEMA y hay
we
muy
need to have
poco
a new
que
model.
podamos hacer
Thank
nosotros.
you. And Kurt.
This is one of those issues which I think is an example of what I view as extremism that didn't necessarily serve the citizens of San Anselmo.
ser
I think
extremista.
there's a difference between a
Estamos es
flood district having been ineffective
un
from whether or not the
diferencia
idea of having a joint powers authority to
activo
work on this issue was a good idea. I think it was a good idea that
junto
was poorly executed. As has been mentioned, at
con
this
una
point, the funds are going in and we don't even have a seat at the table.
política correcta.
I think I
Yo
agree
creo
with Chantel, a reset on this issue would be in order. I think with some new people at the table, both in the council and at the county, which is happening anyway because of the election, there's an opportunity to chart a path forward where we are actually working collaboratively with our neighbors to solve the problem. This is true across climate issues that are multi-jurisdictional. There's a Marin County grand jury report about let's form a new JPA to work on sea level rise. Local governments by themselves typically don't have the bandwidth or capacity to apply for and get grant funding to address these problems.
por ellos
We need
mismos.
it.
Así que
Thank you. And Guy, please unmute and you are next.
Guy, usted sigue.
Please unmute. Guy, you're still muted. Guy, you are still muted and we can't hear you.
No quita el...
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
All right.
Ok,
well,
¿me
of
pueden
course can
escuchar?
see everybody, but at least I'm unmuted. So
Al
regarding
menos
the
ya
flood,
quité el, ya apagué
issue,
el micrófono, encendí el micrófono.
the whole plan was
El
so
último,
flawed from
todo
the
el
get-go.
plan estaba
They didn't-
arruinado desde el
the only-
principio.
The thought was that they were going to get 1/3 of
Eh,
the
La idea era que iban a
retention
tener
of the
un
flood
tercio
water
de la
over the
retención
banks
de
to
las
be taken
aguas
care of
de
by
inundación
detention basins. The other
y,
2/3
y
simply
los
by
otros
some sort of
tercios
magic
iba a
was
ser
removing the platform.
se
It was
iban a
never gonna happen.
remover
You know, I am
mágicamente.
totally in favor of
Nunca iba a
San
pasar.
Anselmo
Estoy de acuerdo que San
retrieving the
Anselmo
platform,
pueda
pulling itself
volver
together.
a planear
There's not
esto.
much we can do in terms of
No hay mucho
the
que podamos
the
hacer
incoming flood,
en
though there are
cuanto
actually some
cuánta
plans.
agua viene,
But we've
aunque
got
sí
to
hay
deal with
algunos
this as
planes,
a
pero
town.
tenemos que
We really
enfrentarlo
need
como
to have the
ciudad.
full responsibility for
Tenemos
the
que
power
tener
of the
toda la
town.
responsabilidad
Very
del
careful about
lugar
this regionalization
y
thought,
tengo mucho
because it
tiempo
leads
con
to
todas estas
flawed
cosas
decisions
de
and
ponerlo por
keeps people out
región.
of being connected. Thank you.
Thank you. And Yoav.
Thanks, Becky. Before I answer this question, I just want to return to 3 responses to the last question, which have frankly left me gobsmacked. The suggestion that we respect the First Amendment, that we not suppress any points of view, or that a swastika is questionably a hate symbol are frankly incomprehensible to me. Those are all hate speech and not protected speech in any way. So I will leave it at that. Now, as for flood control zone 9, exiting through measure F was a gross mistake. We are now paying a tax into a body with which we have no voice at the table. We have no agency, we have no ability to collaborate with the partners, and floods will still happen. So we need to address that. And we need to address that through flood mitigation techniques like permeable pavement and asphalt, green roofs and rain gardens, improved drainage systems, creek restoration, floodable basins, which were put down by Ford and a mistake because multi-use parks are an incredibly important tool for flood mitigation. And we need low impact development that encourages building that reduces stormwater drain off through sustainable building procedures.
Thank you.
Okay,
moving on to question 6. In question 6, we're going to begin with Eileen. Please describe the changes that you would support to improve parking and traffic flow on San Anselmo Avenue to sustain and promote business activity in the town.
para sostener y promover la actividad comercial.
The main change that I support is
El cambio principal que yo apoyo es poner meters. Lo que pasa es que la gente estaciona y se queda por mucho tiempo y no hay manera de mover esos carros. No tiene que ser caro, pero tenemos que tener parking meters para que así entra un poquito de dinero a la ciudad, pero una de las cosas principales es poner esos parquímetros. Otras cosas es, no le gusta la idea de que se haga de una vía San Anselmo Avenue, porque empujaría a los carros a otros vecindarios. darle permiso a las personas que viven en downtown para que no tengan que mover sus carros, pueden parcar ahí si viven ahí en el downtown. Son cosas que van a mejorar.
If we're jamming up construction
Todo.
and housing all over San Anselmo, an inevitable consequence of that is going to be even more traffic than the
Yeah.
traffic we have now. It's just going to be completely out of control. It will force some people out of their cars and onto bikes, which I think is a good thing. But we have a lot of elderly people in San Anselmo. They're not riding bikes and they need to get around by cars. In terms of parking, I think that I agree with Eileen that meters would be appropriate, but I'd go beyond that. And for example, at the Magnolia lot, what could be installed pursuant to a public-private partnership would be stacking parking like there is in New York City. That would take care of a lot of the parking issues that we have, because the problem is too many people, not enough space, and so long as we keep going on the same trajectory, we're going to increase the number of people here and the number of cars, and it's going to become unbearable for everybody.
Número de carros y
And Kurt.
So one obvious solution is to
Una
continue
solución
the Climate
obvia
Action Commission
es
started talking
continuar
about a
con la
long time ago,
Comisión de
and that's taking steps
Cambios
towards
Climáticos
increasing the likelihood that people are sort of pursuing alternatives to taking cars.
para
over
poder
to-
aumentar
We have
la
a fairly
posibilidad de que hayan
bike-friendly town in some
alternativas.
respects, but
Tenemos
people still live
una
in
ciudad muy amistosa,
Unfortunately, people are
pero hay
still gonna come
cosas que mejorar.
with their cars and wanna park.
Hay mucha gente que quiere venir y estacionar sus carros y se va a empeorar. Mi esposa me dice que San Francis Drake se hace un estacionamiento porque es lleno. Usar bicicletas es una buena opción. Parte de nuestra opción, de nuestro plan general, es planear sobre cómo animar a tráfico que no sea por
Thank you.
carros.
And Guy, please unmute, and you are next.
Okay, I think Eileen's idea about the parking meters may be a good idea for San Anselmo.
del
In
estación.
general, I think we should all reflect on what is the traffic surrounding downtown San Anselmo.
Cómo es el
And we have failed intersections frequently during the course of the day. If not failed, I mean, they're just
día.
you're backed up eight car lengths and hoping that you're going to get through the next light change. Anybody who advocates more density of housing right now, I think is you're just giving it's a travesty to the quality of life for San Anselmo.
Difícil para la
How do we-
calidad de San Anselmo.
One thing I might suggest would
Cosa
be a local shuttle, a $5 shuttle. Somebody could have a job.
$5
Senior citizens, call
para
somebody up, take
público
you right downtown, drop you off.
a llevarte
That
a
might be good. For
centro
other senior citizens,
y
get
dejar
out there on your bikes
la,
and
la tercera
you
edad
gotta challenge yourself to stay healthy.
que
Keep living in this.
trata
Thank you.
de estar saludable.
Thank you. Okay, and you all.
I have two daughters, 9 and 11.
Tengo dos
and we
hijas,
can't
9 y
safely
11,
ride our
y
bikes or
no
walk downtown
podemos
San Anselmo because of the
montar
lack
nuestras
of bike
bicicletas
lanes
con
and
seguridad
infrastructure that
porque
makes it
no hay
safe from our
estructura
house
para
to downtown.
bicicleta
If we
segura,
inevitably drive, just
lo
like
que
so many other people in San
lamentablemente
Anselmo likely
nos
drive
hace que
downtown.
manejemos.
So I agree with Kurt entirely
Estoy
that
de
one
acuerdo
of the
con Kirk
best approaches here
totalmente.
would
Una de
be
las
to
mejores
encourage more bike use and
maneras
walking to the
es
extent that is possible to reduce parking
empujar a las
on
personas
the avenue
a apoyar a la
to
gente
benefit.
que use
After that,
bicicletas
I do
y
think that it's
después
worth
tener la
considering some more
instructura.
creative approaches that
Otras
would also
maneras
not require
creativas
meters on the
que
avenue,
no
but that would
requieren
serve our community
parquímetros en la
in interesting and
avenida.
novel ways. So for example,
Pero
Petaluma has built
Petaluma,
parking
por
garages
ejemplo,
by the
tiene
downtown area that
garage,
service that community,
garajes
and people go to
que
the parking garage and
ayudan
park, and then
a la
rest of the day access
ciudad y
all
la
the services
gente
in
va
downtown Petaluma.
ahí,
A parking
estaciona
garage like that
y
at Sir Francis Drake and
da
Greenwood
acceso a
with a
todos.
pedestrian
San
walkway
Francis
over to
Grace y
Francis Drake
Greenwood
to access downtown
es
easily
un
would be
lugar
an
para
interesting and
construir
novel
un
approach
parqueo
to
ahí
addressing the issue
y
that we're
tener
talking about.
un puente para
Thank
peatones.
you. And finally, Chantel.
This is an area that I would say both looking at parking as well as significantly making it easier for people of all ages and all biking skills to bike and walk is very important. The town has some very strong plans in place, and we need to choose one about traffic calming, some of the traffic to encourage more public transportation. The loss of some of those routes to the ferry would support commuters in the downtown, or the returning of some of those routes to the ferries on buses would support commuters. In the downtown area, potentially having a shuttle that runs up and down San Anselmo Avenue. I would like to see it be free, but we can look at the cost of something like that and maybe touch Red Hill, would allow people not to try to park as quickly and closely along those very few streets in the downtown. And I also think we have opportunities for parking garages just off the downtown that would add a level or two to the existing parking garages or parking lots that are open for us. So both and strategy, and we have some good things in the works.
Creo que tendríamos que trabajar
Okay.
estrategias para lograr.
Question 7, we're going to begin with
La
4.
pregunta 7
And the
vamos a
question is,
comenzar.
what are your
¿Cuáles son
emergency preparedness
sus
goals for the next 4 years? And how would you
objetivos de
promote
preparación para
education,
emergencias
planning,
para los
around
próximos
disaster
4 años?
preparedness?
¿Cómo promovería la educación y planificación en torno a la preparación de
I'll
desastres?
just go. The primary one
La primera
has to do with
principal
safe
tiene que ver
evacuation routes
con
in
maneras,
Florida. Huge
rutas
amount of San
seguras de
Anselmo
evacuación.
involves very small, very
Hay
narrow, very winding streets up on
muchas
hills.
áreas de San
And the
Anselmo
only way that
envuelve
people
caminos
are going
muy
to be able
angostos
to
y la única
address
manera
any
que
sort
la
of
gente
fire
va a poder
tornado that, God forbid,
un
wails through
movimiento
here, is going to
coordinado,
be
Dios
if
no
we
permita hay un
practice
incendio,
escaping.
es si
Because what will
practicamos
happen
escapar,
if we don't is that we'll
porque si no
panic.
lo
And when
practicamos
there's
es que nos
panic,
vamos a entrar
what
el
goes right
pánico.
along with panic is disaster and
Y
death.
cuando
So the
uno
main
se
thing
paniquea,
that I
hay
would
desastre y
support
muerte.
is the continuing
Yo
work with the
apoyaría
fire department and
el
the
continuo trabajo del
MWPA
Departamento de
in developing
Bombores y de
evacuation routes and then
MWP
organizing neighborhoods
para
and practicing
organizar
evacuating
los
so that we know
vecindarios
what
y
to do
practicar la evacuación
if and
para que
when,
sepamos qué
or
hacer
hopefully never, that fateful
y
day
ojalá
comes.
que nunca tengamos esa
Thank you.
oportunidad
Kurt, you're up next.
del
So I agree with
desastre.
Ford around fire preparedness.
De
We
hacer
have these things called Firewise, committees, which are neighborhood groupings of folks that come together to sort of plan for and consider what they're going to do and review the recommendations that they've gotten from the local CHA related to that. I think that could be stepped up dramatically. That there's a fairly small number of those that exist currently in the town. And so with some additional work from the town through the newsletter and others, I think we could hopefully precipitate that. Second issue, and this goes directly to my day job at the Climate Center, is related to power resilience. So it's great that we have the Town Hall Resilience Hub starting construction. We could easily imagine a world where every single critical facility in town is comparable in that it has a basically solar canopy and available battery storage, so that all critical facilities in town have a plan for keeping the lights on when the power goes out, and it will go out.
gobiernos del pueblo estén listos para
Okay, thank you. And
emergencia.
Guy, you are next.
Thank you. I'm going to use the term carrying capacity. Eileen mentioned it before.
Voy a hacer
We're
un
talking about
término de
emergencies.
capacidad
You look at our
para
police,
hablar que ya
10
mencionó
years
Aileen.
ago, or maybe
Cuando
20 years
vemos
ago, we
emergencias y
stopped
pensamos en
having
la
the San Anselmo
policía,
Police Department.
paramos de
ourselves in a
tener
precarious
un
position
departamento de
with that, with the
policía
Twin Cities,
en San
Metro Mountain
Anselmo.
Police. I would like to see a 5-year
Me
plan of bringing it
gustaría
back,
ver un
even though
plan
I
de
know
5
it would be
años para traer el
very
departamento
difficult
de policía de
proposition, but we're
regreso.
spending $5
Sería
billion
una
a
propuesta
year
muy
for the
difícil,
police,
pero
down in
pagamos
Central
mucho
Marin.
dinero a
In the fire
Central
department,
Marín.
we have 4 fire stations who are together. One of
El
them
de
will be gone
4
next year due
estaciones
to
de
injuries. We're
bomberos
not in a good position
van a
there.
quitar
No
una
one's
y van a haber
mentioning
3
actually is
y
that
nadie
the
está
big deal is going to be
mencionando
earthquake.
que el problema va
How
a
do we
ser
prepare for
también
ourselves? To
un
me,
terremoto.
we
¿Cómo
have
nos
to
preparamos?
empower our
Tenemos que
neighborhoods
empoderar a
and
nuestros
think about,
vecindarios,
again, greater density,
pensando
etc.
para
It's so
más
exciting.
densidad.
We must stay local.
Es
As a
malo.
community,
Tenemos
we've
que
gotta
quedarnos
work with it.
locales. Tenemos que
Okay,
trabajar
thank you.
con eso.
Next is Yoav.
I think this might be one of the only things that Ford and I agree on, which is that we need safe evacuation routes and evacuation planning in place for the case of an emergency. That is critical. I know a lot of people who, when I ask them, what's your plan for when you get an evacuation order, have no idea whether they should walk, bike, stay in their cars, evacuate then, evacuate later. And just so you know, the timer is not working. I'm seeing a stop.
No, I see that.
Okay. Thank you. But critically also, we need to ensure first responders are supported. In the case of an emergency, our safety, our well-being will be in the hands of our first responders. So that means we need to make sure our firefighters have up-to-date and sophisticated equipment. We need to make sure that they have the necessary staffing levels on each fire engine to assure that they can evacuate us safely. And we need to ensure that they can live nearby so they're not 2 hours away when an evacuation order happens. Lastly, I will say that the hills are an issue. And so we probably need to consider painting parking boxes or redlining and curbside more parking spaces so that there is passable space for those fire engines, that they can navigate those windy roads in the case of an emergency.
De los bomberos puedan.
Thank you. Chantel, you're up next.
Chantel.
En nuestra comunidad y para mí personalmente, la preparación de emergencia es una prioridad alta.
Yo vivo en uno de esos caminos angostos en las montañas. Tenemos que practicar más frecuentemente, aumentar la prevención de incendios, limpiando las áreas alrededor de la casa. He aprendido que hay muchos grupos o vecindarios que no tienen plan. Quiero que el ayuntamiento inspire ese trabajo. Quiero que tengamos niveles mínimos en los bomberos. Quiero ver que estos niveles sean razonables y que en el lugar, en nuestra ciudad, tenemos que conectar a los líderes para poder tener un esfuerzo y colaboración para que podamos ver cómo destruimos 3 camiones de bomberos en todos los vecindarios.
Since I've been on the council, we now have 3 firefighters on every engine, and that was a long time coming, but we're now at what is the standard. We're looking at consolidating with Central Marin Fire, and that may happen to give us just a broader group that we can pull from. Also, the MWPA will be coming up for re-up, and even Tiburon and Belvedere want to get in now, and I suggest that we continue with MWPA. I agree with dedicated spots in the hills for parking. I think we should continue with the defensible space inspections that MWPA is doing, and I support the shaded fuel breaks that they've been engaged in. The other important thing we've already done is we are building a resiliency hub on the top of Town Hall so that when there are planned power shutoffs, residents can come to Town Hall if they need it for air conditioning, if they need it to charge their phones. So we are already planning for emergencies. And as I've mentioned earlier, in terms of flooding, I'm already talking to council members in surrounding jurisdictions about how we plan for 2027 when they get out of flood zone 9.
Ellos estén en una zona de inundación.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Esto concluye la parte de preguntas del foro. Hay muchas más preguntas que quisiéramos preguntar, pero no hay tiempo. Antes de que los candidatos hagan sus declaraciones finales,
Slide 1, please. So here's some important dates. On Monday, October 7th, the Marin County Elections Department began mailing ballots to all registered voters. Ballots can be returned by U.S. mail, an official secure ballot drop box, at any vote center. Official ballot drop boxes are now available. For in-person voting, vote centers replace assigned polling places. Voters may vote in person at any vote center in Marin. A complete list of locations is included in your voter information guide. All vote centers will be open at least 4 days before Election Day.
votante. Todos los
In
centros
case anybody doesn't remember, November 5th is
de
election day.
elecciones.
Mailed ballots must be postmarked by this date.
Las
Vote
elecciones
centers are open until 8 p.m.
por favor, deben estar
Ballots returned using a ballot drop box must be deposited by 8 p.m.
a las 8 de la noche.
October 21st is the last day to register online to vote.
A las 8
After
de
this day, you can still register, but only in person.
registrarse en línea para
Save
votar.
two, please.
Esta fecha aún puedes registrarte, pero solo en persona.
Here are the important dates in Spanish.
Están los días importantes en
Just
eso.
a couple reminders, be sure to sign your ballot if you return it by mail or in a drop box.
Acuérdese de
If you
firmar.
have questions, please reach out to Marin County's Elections Department in person, online, or by phone.
Si tiene preguntas, comuníquese
Slide
con
3, please.
las del condado de Marin.
There are many online resources for election information, including the League's website at marinlwv.org.
Tener información electoral.
Another helpful League of Women Voters resource is Vote 411, a free online tool that provides information about what's on your ballot.
111
Candidates are invited to enter their information.
sobre lo que hay.
Voters can get a personalized list of candidates, including their biographies and top priorities,
Antes,
and
pues,
information about local ballot measures and more in English and in Spanish.
biografías y
Vote 411 replaces Voter's Edge, our previous online voter guide.
en inglés y en
I
español.
encourage you to please visit vote411.org, and I want to thank all of these candidates for posting their information on vote411.org.
Anterior guía
To
para
forget what they said today, you can go online and look at Vote 411 and compare all of their statements, including their experience and their priorities.
y puede
Thank
ver
you.
su experiencia y sus prioridades y puede ir en línea. Muchas gracias.
And now the candidates will
Y
make
ahora los
closing
candidatos
statements of
harán
1 minute
declaraciones
each.
finales
We'll
de
go
1
with
minuto
reverse
cada
order
uno.
of the opening
Vamos en
statement,
inverso
starting with
orden
Chantel.
y comenzaremos con Chantel.
Thank you for this evening.
Gracias por
I
esta
would like
noche.
one of your 3 votes
Me
for the
gustaría
San
uno de
Anselmo
tus
Town
3
Council. I
votos
am a
por el
leader who
Consejo
shares
Municipal o el
information,
Ayuntamiento.
listens, and takes
Yo
action.
quiero
I
compartir
have led
información,
in San Anselmo, at
escuchar
the state, and
y
at the
tomar
county
acción.
level.
Tengo
I
experiencia en
champion
el
our
estado,
economic
a nivel de
emergency
condado y a la
preparedness,
ciudad.
infrastructure upgrades,
Emergencias
inclusive
de
community
desastres,
connectedness, and
conexión
balanced housing
inclusiva
policies to
de
meet the needs
residentes
of
y
San Anselmo
pólizas
residents and
balanceadas
businesses.
para
I have been endorsed
llenar las
by people that
necesidades
I
de
have
todos.
worked with and
He,
had a
tra-
moment to
he
talk to and had
trabajado,
long amounts of time
he
to talk to
tenido mucho
because of my
tiempo
track
para
record
trabajar
of
con todo el
clarity,
mundo. Tengo
effectiveness,
récord de
calm
claridad,
in the face of
efectividad,
difficult conversations,
calma
and the results that I've been able to produce
enfrentando
in our community
conversaciones
over the last
difíciles.
25 years.
Y
I
con la
hope for one of
experiencia
your
que he
votes.
tenido
Thank you
en los
very much for having
pasados
me.
25
Thank you to the
años,
league, and
espero
thank
de
you to the
tener
chamber, and thank you to the
este
other
foro.
candidates
Gracias a
as we
todos, a
move
la
forward
Cámara de
towards the
Comercio y a
election.
los otros candidatos.
Thank you. Next is Eileen. And you got it.
No,
Not almost have it.
we're going in
No,
reverse.
not yet. You're still mute.
I thought we were going in reverse order.
I thought we were going in reverse order.
And that would be Chantel, Yoav, Guy, Kurt, Ford, and Eileen.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Well,
Am I right that it's
I'm
reverse order?
happy to go. That's fine.
yeah. No, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. So we started with Chantel, and now we're going with Yoav. Sorry about that.
So should I start?
Yes. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for this evening. As I mentioned before, I have 2 daughters. They're 9 and 11, and I'm doing this for them. I want to build a San Anselmo that works for them, not only today, but that will also be here, thriving, vibrant, affordable, livable, safe, when they want to return in 15, 20 years. And that requires work. You know, I've been walking around San Anselmo, knocking on doors these last few weeks, and I've personally knocked on about 1,900 doors now. And what I hear from everyone that I've talked to is the desire for practical, feasible solutions to challenges that we're facing. People want to move forward. Future-forward leadership that is ethical, principled, values-driven, innovative, pragmatic, and really builds consensus forward for navigating the complex challenges that we see every day. I have a goal to ensure that San Anselmo remains a place where people of all ages, backgrounds, and income levels can live, work, and thrive. Honored to have your vote. Thank you.
Que todos ellos puedan
Thank you
tener.
very much. Okay, and now Guy?
Guy.
I want San Anselmo.
Yo quiero que San Anselmo sea una ciudad lleno de liderazgo. Quiero que San Anselmo, esta ciudad, que sea un líder en el planeta. Y para mí, cuando yo veo todos estos planes, adoptar o cambiar con la crisis del medio ambiente, pero no como un individuo o una ciudad, de ver cómo nosotros estamos dejando una huella. No hemos aprovechado el poder de nosotros como humanos, que podamos hacer esto. No para tener más concreto. Hay que cuidar más cemento. Para tener más cemento, mejor hay que cuidar los parques. Es muy tradicional. Es ser responsable. Una ciudad que es responsable de cómo impacta el planeta y a la gente es una buena ciudad. Gracias.
Okay, Kurt, you're next.
Thank you, and thanks to our hosts.
Gracias a los.
We live in one of the richest communities, in one of the richest states, in one of the richest nations of the world. And yet we're still not doing what we need to do to reduce our own emissions or protect ourselves from the extreme events that are headed our way. I
Protegernos
think we have a responsibility,
en emergencias. Creo que
and
es
most importantly, to
lo más.
current and future generations to do a better job than we are now. If you think this is important, and you think it's time to move past some of the polarization we've seen on town council, I
Tratar de
appreciate your vote. I'm supported by people
visto
on
en
both the right and the left, not because they agree with me on everything. They don't,
no creo
because they agree with my underlying values, long experience,
que quiera
and commitment to working collaboratively
es mi
for a better
experiencia
future. San Anselmo. Thank you.
para trabajar en colaboración para un mejor
Ford,
futuro.
you're next.
Thank you for tonight's program.
Gracias
I want to
por
go
el
where the
programa de hoy en la
community involved
noche.
citizens of San Anselmo want to go.
Quiero con un
I want to
comité
move per our
de
citizens'
ciudadanos,
desires,
quiero
not
que
per an
nos
elected
movamos de
official's agenda.
acuerdo a lo
There's
que
a
digan
difference
los
between wanting
ciudadanos,
to have experience
no
and a
por lo que
record that
quiere
can
el
be
gobierno.
examined.
Hay una
Set that towards my
diferencia
accomplishments as a council member.
entre los récords
Navigating
que
the early
hay
days of the
y
COVID
ver si se han
pandemic as
hecho.
mayor
Vean
and
mi
our
récord
economic and social recovery.
como
Implementing San
alcalde.
Anselmo's Live on the Avenue event
eh,
series and parklet.
el
Fighting for the liberation
seguir
of
las
Creek Park Plaza.
actividades,
Addressing the
cambiar
firestorm
por la
threat by
plaza,
requiring 3
el
firefighters
Creekside
on
Plaza,
each Ross Valley fire engine.
el
It's now the
continuar
norm.
teniendo
Ensuring
3
Sky Ranch, Bald
bomberos
Hill,
por
and other open
camión
space
de bomberos.
purchases.
Eso es lo
I'm
normal.
endorsed by Jonathan Braun
Estoy
and Stanley Radke, the
respaldado
Open Space
por
Committee co-chairs.
el comité,
Enacting ordinances
del
prohibiting the
comité
single-use
de
plastics and two-cycle
planeamiento del
engines and
co-chair,
repairing our infrastructure, particularly our library and roads.
y
I would like
quiere
your vote. Thank you.
mejorar la biblioteca y
Ford.
los
And now,
caminos.
finally, Eileen.
Thank you. The IJ calls me a strong, practical voice on the council.
Y
That's because I understand that residents want town
fuerte
government to focus on the basics first.
porque tengo
That means well-paved roads, and we have the highest paved index in Marin. That
Ah.
means safe streets. We've installed bike lanes, new
calles
curbs,
limpias,
crosswalk beacons,
trabajos
and
bien
speed bumps.
pagados.
That means emergency services, and we now have 3 firefighters on every engine.
Ahora
And it means a
tenemos
smooth running town, which we
pero
have. But
cabo
they also want us to make our town special. And
Yeah.
that's why I've focused on things like our parks, recreational opportunities, and community events like Live on the Avenue.
crear
San Anselmo is a
oportunidades.
great town, and I understand that it's the basics that come first, but then it's that icing on the cake that makes everyone else want to live here. I'm going to continue to focus on the basics, and as your mayor, it's been an honor to serve you, and I'd appreciate your vote.
Lo aprecio su voto y espero que voten
Thank
por
you
mí.
all so much for your closing
Gracias a
statements.
todos.
Before we end the evening, our host
Antes de
partner,
finalizar,
Benedetto Chico,
nuestro
representing the
socio
San Anselmo
anfitrión
Chamber of
Benedetto
Commerce, has a
Chico,
brief
en representación
statement.
de la Cámara de Comercio de San Anselmo, tiene algunas palabras de cierre.
I think.
Creo que
Benedetto, are you there?
Benedetto, ¿está ahí?
Well, I'm not hearing from him. I do have his closing
No
remarks, and so I
escucho,
will read that
así
to
que
you.
voy a leer lo que él iba a
Many thanks
decir.
again to all the
Gracias a todos los
attendees.
candidatos
Due to
por
the restrictions, we
participar,
could
al
not, of
equipo
course,
del
have
Foro de la
all the
Liga
questions that many of
y a
you
la
had
Cámara de
for
Comercio de
tonight.
San Anselmo.
But
Y
I
un
suggest you
agradecimiento
reach out
especial
directly to the candidates if you still have
a
important
nuestros
questions
socios
to
del
clarify
departamento
before
de esto.
voting.
Quiero
Good
que
night,
se acerquen a
everybody.
los
That was
candidatos.
Benedetto.
Buenas noches.
So thank you to the candidates for participating, to the
Gracias a
League
los
Forum
candidatos por
team, and
participar,
to the San
al
Anselmo
equipo de la
Chamber of
Liga y a la
Commerce.
Cámara de
And special
Comercio.
thanks to our partners at
Y
Community
gracias
Media Center
especiales
of Marin
para
and to
nuestros
our
socios del
Spanish
Centro
language
de Medio
interpreters.
Comunitario de Marín y a
The
nuestros
video from
intérpretes de
this
español.
forum will be
En los
posted on the League's
próximos días se
website in the
publicará
next
un
few
video del
days.
foro de esta noche en el
Thank you
sitio
again
web de la
for
Liga.
joining
Gracias
us this
nuevamente
evening.
por acompañarnos esta
And
noche
most important, thank
y
you
lo
for
más
voting.
importante,
Good
gracias
night,
por
everybody.
votar. Buenas noches para todos.